Guys, good morning, guys. Welcome to my world. We are about 3 miles out in front of Jaco, Costa Rica, in the Pacific Ocean. And yeah, this is my playground. I'm out here, and my work ground. I'm out here every day, and it's my, what experience I have out in this world that led to the creation and the development of this. And this is the Spyderco Siren. The Spyderco Siren is a 3.6 inch folding Spyderco salt knife. Salt knives from Spyderco are their ultra corrosion resistant line of knives. They're made with a special steel that has almost no carbon in it. So you can use this every day on the salt water and leave it covered in whatever, salt, blood, guts, and throw it in the sink, and it just doesn't rust. It is in a completely different league than your normal stainless steel knives. So I want to talk a little bit about this design and how it came to be and what its features are. I'll warn you now, this is probably going to be kind of a long video, but I'll do my best to keep it as short and sweet as I can. And if I roll up on some bait like I'm doing right now, I'm gonna drop a jig down while I'm doing this review, because yeah. So this all started with a knife called the Waterway, which was my first design, and it was a fixed blade, and I developed it for my use here on the kayak. And I also developed it to be an all-around, everyday, utilitarian fixed blade knife. I'm only going to do this for a second, bear with me. So the Waterway was a 4.5 or so inch blade. Wouldn't this be awesome if I hooked up? I'm talking to you. Okay, enough of that. Waterway is a 4.5 inch fixed blade, and I keep one mounted here on the kayak. I use it. I carry it inside waistband all the time. And bottom line, I wanted a folding version of the Waterway, and that's how the Siren was born. So making a folding version of a fixed blade is more difficult than just, breaking it in half and drilling a hole and folding it. There's pesky things like physics get in the way. So you will definitely notice the resemblance between the Siren and the Waterway, but there's some liberties we're taking with handle shape and blade shape and position of the guard. And it's a different knife slightly, but it's in the spirit of the Waterway knife. So here's what we did with this knife. I want a full-size folder. This is 3.6 inch. And first of all, let me say this. If you're thinking that this is only, I don't fish, or I'm not out in the ocean, this knife is for me, get that idea out of your head. That's not even what the knife was, the basis of the creation of the knife. This is an EDC knife made by a fisherman for a fisherman, but this is I carry this every day. This is my idea, my interpretation of what an EDC knife, an everyday carry knife, should be. It just so happens that a lot of my everyday carry happens out here on the ocean. So I optimize some of the features to perform well out here, but this does everything that I want a normal everyday knife to do. So what we did, first of all, let's talk a little bit about the design and what we did to keep it rust proof. Spyderco makes a lot of folding salt knives already in their salt line. The majority of those are Backlocks, and I have years and years of experience with their Backlock salts, and I have a lot of faith and a lot of confidence in the Backlock design to withstand the highest levels of corrosion. So that was probably my main reason for going with a Backlock on this. But in addition to that, a Backlock allows you to make a linerless, well, not in addition, in support of that, the Backlock allows you to make a linerless design. So there's no steel nested or inserted liners in this. It's just G10. It's a, two-tone, but whatever. It's still just G10 with no liners. So that just eliminates some of the moving and small parts that would normally be made of metal, that would create a higher chance or a higher probability of having corrosion issues, especially when you start getting dissimilar metals in contact with each other. You'll get galvanic corrosion, and it just becomes, if it's not necessary, you want to keep a salt-proof knife as minimalistic as possible, and the Backlock was the lock I had the most confidence in for that. in a linerless design. You'll notice that all the hardware is coated. That's a DLC coating on the hardware that's intended to give it even a higher level of corrosion resistance. The blade is reminiscent of that of the waterway. If you want to learn, I'm not going to make this video too long, but if you want to learn more about the blade and its intended uses, go watch my waterway video. I talk a lot about the blade shape and how it's meant to be used and what it was created for. Now, the texture on the handle, on the waterway, what we did was machined in, CNC machined in a texture to a 3D handle. And that wasn't necessary on the Spyderco because we were using flat slabs and we're using what's called peel ply G10. This is a coarser grade of G10, of peel ply, than what's standard issue on the Spyderco knives. So this is going to feel significantly coarser than, say, paramilitary 2 or 3 or a military. Probably like double, probably twice as coarse, or at least 50% more. So the idea for that is you want to have a lot of grip for hard use, not just on the water, but if you got wet or bloody hands or muddy hands or dirty hands or whatever. I mean, this is a hard use knife. So I wanted to make a handle that you could hold on to in any conditions. Another thing you'll notice about the handle is that the chamfering around the relief around the edges of the handle is a little more pronounced than what you would typically get on a golden Colorado Spyderco, like the paramilitary 2 or the military or the para 3. Those knives, I love them. They're some of my favorites. The handles I want something that was a little less square and a little more rounded around the corners. So for my hand, ergonomics are subjective. For my hand, I like that smoother feel on the corners. And there's still plenty of surface area on the top, so it's not digging into your hand. But you will notice that difference on this G10 model compared to some of the G10 stuff out of Golden. Let me go over real quick some of the reasons why I chose a backlock for this design. Because some people love backlocks. I love them. Some people are like, nah, they're not quite as flickable and fidget friendly, and I understand reasons why a backlock was chosen. The first one I already went over. It's the lock which I have the most confidence in to be able to build a completely rust-proof folder. The second reason is one, I'm personally used to it. I've used it for years and years and years. I'm very comfortable opening and closing and doing all of that with a very sure grip. But I find a backlock is a safer knife. When I say safe, I mean safer to do it without dropping it. And yeah, okay, you may not be as big of a spaz as I am, but I've dropped compression locks once or twice in my life. I've dropped one on a marble floor closing it, and yeah, maybe I wasn't paying attention or whatever, but out here where I've already got wet and bloody hands and there's a lot going on, I might have a fish over here, I want something that I don't have to release my grip on to close. Now with a compression lock, there's multiple ways to close it, and you can close it like a backlock, but what most people do is they'll pinch it like this, put the index finger in, and flip the blade down. I find that I am more likely to have the knife slip than I am with a backlock, and the way I close this one is just to depress the lock, drop the blade, and close it. And I never have to release my full grip on the knife when I do that. So that's my preference. Not everybody's going to agree on that, but I want you to understand at least why I chose it. This particular backlock, another reason I chose a backlock is because Golden, Colorado, Spyderco's factory makes the best backlocks in the game, period, man. Their backlocks are bank vaults. This thing locks up. There's no up and down blade play. There's no side to side blade play. It is rock solid lockup. But the beauty of it is, even though there's zero play, watch what happens when I depress the lock. Man, that thing just free falls. Free falls on. No wrist action, nothing. The action on this thing, now clearly a backlock has a self-close bias, and we'll get to that in a minute. That's another reason I chose the backlock. It has a self-close bias, so it's never going to be as smooth because the lock bar is putting pressure on the blade tang. But when the lock is depressed, that thing is every bit as smooth as a perfect iteration of a paramilitary tube. It's crazy smooth. Amazing what they do with their tolerances out of that Golden factory. So I'm really stoked with that. One other thing about why I chose a backlock is the self-close bias I just mentioned. And what that means is, with a liner lock knife or compression lock knife, there's a little ball detent in there that holds the knife in position. But once you break that detent, once you come out about that far, boom, the knife will just open or close in any of this position. There's nothing holding it closed once you get past that tiny detent. So if you're jostling around or in the kayak and you got this thing inside waistband or in your pocket and it opens up, there's nothing to make it close again. A lockback is different. A lockback has a self-close bias, which means once you get to about right here, that bias kicks in and it pulls the knife closed. So as long as the knife doesn't open any more than that, you know, it can bounce around and get dropped or whatever, and it's going to close itself, whereas other locks won't. Some will. Ball bearing lock does a little bit, but a backlock is the best at that. So that's another reason we chose it. And I'd like to point out one other thing about this lock and about what a good job Spyderco did with it. You know, one thing people say about backlocks is they say, well, I like a compression lock or whatever because I like to be able to close the blade without putting my fingers in the way of the blade path. Fair enough, you know. This knife closes so easily. One, because it's easy to get a grip on the handle, but just by putting the index finger on the lock. And that's something I've seen people do, and I've never been great at doing it. You know, it's kind of weird and awkward, but the lock, you know, it takes a lot of pressure. My hands weren't strong enough, whatever. This one presses super easy, and the blade just falls closed. I mean, one, it's great to have another way to close, but honestly, that kind of like adds to the fidget factor of this knife in ways that you know, other lockbacks don't have. And you can almost just gravity open it like that. You probably can't. Yeah, you can. Action's killer on it. Let's leave it at that. So anyway, that's pretty much my spiel on the knife and what it is and what the design is and why it exists. Every time I do one of these videos, I usually try and break down a fish for you. Not because, you know, that's all the knife's for, just because, whatever, this is my environment. And, you know, it is one of the jobs that the knife was created for. So, let's reach up in our bag here. Bear with me. And let's see what we got. There's today's catch. Nice little snapper. And what we're going to do, times are tough right now in Costa Rica, guys. We're in the middle of this coronavirus stuff. And our lockdown is tight here. And nobody's got work. Nobody's got any food. It's gnarly, honestly. So I'm going to withhold. I got plenty of opinions about all that. I'm going to withhold opinions because opinions don't feed hungry people, but fishing rods and knives do. So I'm going to try and focus more on one than I do on the other and keep my opinions to myself. But I'm going to break this down and I'm going to take this fillet off and keep that for myself and my girlfriend, and the rest I'm going to leave on the fish, and I'm going to give it to some poor folks up here who are just, you know, damn near starving right now. So let's do this side. This side's easier to start with. Hopefully you guys can see that. I don't know if that's the best camera position. Let me adjust this a little bit. Okay, maybe that's better. We'll see. All right, here we go. So right behind the gill, and then this is part of what this particular blade shape was made for. Slides nicely there. This little baby up. Oh, what a beautiful fillet. What a beautiful dinner. So blessed. So blessed. Yeah, buddy. They're going to be happy today. Man cannot live on rice and beans alone. Maybe he can. Who wants to? All right. Pop over those rib bones there. Make our slit. And this thing should just pull right off. And there we go, guys. And you know, it's not a fillet knife, but hey, man. Well, come here, buddy. Come here. But that's a pretty darn clean snapper. That's pretty clean. Yeah, so we'll put this stuff away and have dinner in a little bit. So that's it, guys. That's my little on deck review of the Spyderco Siren. I hope everybody gets to try one. I'm really pleased with how this came out, and I need to mention a few things before this video ends. There were 3 people, institutions that were very helpful that I have to mention first. First one is a man named Darren Sanders. Darren helped me create the first prototype for the Spyderco Waterway, and without his help that never would have happened. We sat in his shop together and he was patient with me, and we went through drawings and we went through wooden models, and he worked with me until I got everything the way I wanted it, and he made the actual prototype. They got presented to Spyderco and accepted. So thank you, Darren, for that. And the first, second, and third prototypes for this knife were done by a custom maker named Chad Kelly, and Chad was just, it was unbelievable what Chad did with me, because I mean, the work he did in making this prototype possible was just tireless. I mean, we spent almost a year on it, man, and we did things and we did them wrong. A lot of times it was my fault, and he would redo them. I mean, God bless you, Chad. You did an amazing job. And I took that prototype to Spyderco and they accepted it. And the last people I want to thank are Spyderco themselves. One, for working with me, thank you, but also for helping me to get both of these knives just right. Because both times that I brought them prototypes, as much as I thank those custom makers, as amazing as they did, it takes multiple prototypes to get everything just right. And none of them were perfect, not because of the makers, because of me. You know, I had to make something, and I want to change this a little bit and smooth this out and increase the curve there. And on both models, Spyderco made multiple prototypes also until we got everything exactly right. And you know, they understand there that a purpose designed knife needs to be capable of performing up to its purpose. And because of that, they were willing to spend the extra time and the resources to work with, you know, a guy like me who's not a professional knife maker. And you know, it was a little bit tougher than having a guy who brings them a perfect prototype that's a finished work. So thank you, guys. Thank you for your patience with me, and thank you for helping, or for, you know, having the patience to do the work to get this right, to put something that was perfect out there. So thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who buys one and enjoys using one. That's it, guys. Over and out.